Teni stepped into the house, smiling. Mama, you look so tired. Have you been sleeping well? Mama Teni forced a smile, her hands trembling. It is just the stress of business, my child. Her voice was dry, hollow. The weight of her decision pressed down on her like a heavy stone. She had already prepared everything. The ritual was set. The spirits were watching, waiting. All she had to do now was finish it. Teni, unsuspecting, placed her basket on the table. I brought you some herbs and dried fish from my husband's village. You always say their seasoning is the best. Mama Teni nodded absently. Her mind wasn't on the gifts. It was on the sacrifice. Outside, Ada crouched by the window, her heart racing. She had overheard enough to understand the truth. Mama Teni was going to kill her own daughter. I have to stop this, she thought. Mama Teni reached into her wrapper and pulled out a small blade. Teni, come and sit, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Let me rub some oil on your head. You must be tired from the journey. Teni smiled and obeyed, lowering herself onto the mat. Mama Teni's hands shook as she dipped her fingers into a thick, black oil, a mixture of herbs and unseen forces. She smeared it onto Teni's forehead, her chest tightening. Tears welled in her eyes. Could she really do this? Could she slaughter her own child to save herself? The shadows in the room stirred, stretching unnaturally long. Do it, the spirits whispered. Mama Teni gripped the blade, raising it above Teni's head. The door burst open, and Ada rushed in, knocking Mama Teni back before the knife could strike. Mama Teni, no! Ada screamed. Teni jumped up, confused. What is going on? The room shook violently as an invisible force roared in anger. The candles flickered wildly, the shadows shifting in furious motion. The spirits were not pleased. Mama Teni collapsed, gasping for breath. It's too late, she sobbed. They will take me. Teni stared at her mother in horror. Mama, what have you done? Then the walls cracked, and the room was plunged into an unnatural darkness. The spirits had come to claim their debt. A cold wind howled through the room, extinguishing the lantern's flame. The shadows stretched, pulsing like living things. The air smelled of rot and something older, something beyond human understanding. Teni clutched her chest, stepping back. Mama, what is happening? Mama Teni could not answer. She could barely breathe. The spirits were furious. They had waited long enough. A deep, bone-chilling voice echoed through the room. You have failed us, Mama Teni. The floor trembled. A tall, faceless figure emerged from the darkness, its form shifting like smoke. It loomed over Mama Teni, its clawed fingers stretching toward her. You promised us blood. Now we will take yours. Mama Teni fell to her knees, weeping. Please, spare me. I will do anything. The spirits laughed a low, guttural sound that made Teni's skin crawl. Ada, still standing near the door, knew she had to act fast. She grabbed Teni's wrist and whispered, we have to run. But Teni couldn't move. She stared at her mother, shock and betrayal written on her face. Mama, did you really plan to kill me? Tears streamed down Mama Teni's face. I didn't want to, my child. But the spirits cut her off. Enough. A powerful force threw Mama Teni backward, slamming her against the wall. She gasped, her limbs locking in place. The spirits were pulling her in, dragging her toward the shadows. Her eyes widened in terror. No, please. The room darkened further. The walls seemed to close in. A black mist wrapped around Mama Teni's body, twisting, tightening. She could feel it now. They weren't just taking her body. They were taking her soul. Ada knew they couldn't stop the spirits with strength, but there was something she had learned from her grandmother, an old woman who knew the ways of the ancestors. She took a deep breath and shouted, by the power of the ones who came before us, I call upon the keepers of light. Let justice be done. A sudden gust of wind blew through the room. The temperature shifted, and for the first time, the spirits hesitated. A faint glow appeared at the doorway. Mama Teni's late grandmother, a woman of great spiritual power, stood there. her spirit bathed in golden light. "You have done wrong, my dear daughter," the old woman's voice rang out. "But your fate is not yet sealed." The spirits hissed and recoiled, displeased by the interference. Ada and Teni watched in awe as the ghostly figure stepped forward. "You must choose," the grandmother's spirit said. "Give up your dark ways and face the consequences of your sins. Or let the spirits take you to the void, where you will never rest." The room fell silent. Mama Teni trembled, staring into the abyss that was slowly closing in around her. She had only one chance to make things right. The room was deathly silent. Mama Teni's grandmother's spirit stood in the doorway, glowing with a warm, golden light. The dark spirits hissed and recoiled, their shadowy forms writhing like smoke caught in the wind. "You must choose, my daughter," the old woman's voice echoed. "Renounce your dark ways and face your punishment, or let the spirits take you into eternal torment." Mama Teni's chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. Her eyes darted between the two forces, the wicked spirits she had once served, and the ancestral guardian who had come to offer her a final chance. She had spent years cheating fate, using dark magic to gain wealth and power. Now there was no escaping her debt. Her knees buckled as she fell to the ground, weeping. "I was blinded by greed," she sobbed. "I was a fool. But she turned to Teni, her face twisted in pain. "I never wanted to harm you, my child." Teni stood frozen, her heart pounding. Could she believe her mother? Could she forgive her? Words mean nothing, the spirit snarled. A debt must be paid. Suddenly, Mama Teni's grandmother raised her hand, and the golden light flared brighter. "There is another way," she declared. The spirits hissed in rage. "She has failed us. She belongs to us." "Yes," the grandmother said, her gaze heavy on Mama Teni. "But she can choose to give herself, willingly." Mama Teni's breath caught. "Instead of running from your fate, my daughter, you can give yourself to the spirits as a willing sacrifice. If you do, your debt will be settled." Mama Teni's blood ran cold. To give herself willingly meant she would never return. Her soul would belong to the spirits forever, bound to their darkness. But it would also mean that Teni and Ada would be safe. For the first time in her life, she thought of someone other than herself. She turned to Teni, her lips trembling. "My child, I have done terrible things, but let me do this one right thing before I go." Tears streamed down Teni's face. "Mama, no." But Mama Teni had already made her choice. She stood tall, wiped her tears, and faced the spirits. "I offer myself willingly," she said, her voice steady. "Take me and let my daughter be free." The shadows shuddered, as if pleased. The spirits had never expected her to surrender so easily. The tallest spirit extended its hand. "Then come, Mama Teni. Your time has ended." The golden light of the grandmother's spirit dimmed as the dark spirits closed in. The air turned heavy, the temperature dropping as the shadows wrapped around Mama Teni like a shroud. For a brief moment, Teni saw her mother's face tired, regretful, but at peace. Then, in a final rush of darkness, Mama Teni was gone. The spirits vanished with her, dissolving into the void. And then, silence. The house was still. The air was clear, the evil presence gone. The walls, once covered in shadows, returned to their normal state. Mama Teni's grandmother's spirit lingered for a moment, looking at Teni and Ada with gentle eyes. "She has paid her debt," she said softly. "Honor her memory by choosing a different path." Then, like a fading candle, she disappeared. Teni collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. Ada knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "She made her choice, Teni. She saved you." The two young women sat there, mourning the loss of a mother, a mentor, a woman who had walked a dark path, but in the end chose redemption over destruction. Outside, the first rays of dawn peeked over the horizon. For the first time in years, Mama Teni's house was free of darkness. The sun rose, casting a golden light over the village. The air felt lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted. But inside Mama Teni's house, grief hung heavy. Teni sat on the floor, staring blankly at the spot where her mother had vanished. Torn between sorrow and relief, she tried to make sense of what had just happened. Ada, still shaken, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. She saved you, Teni. In the end, she did the right thing. Teni wiped her tears. But she's gone. Forever. Ada nodded. Yes. But maybe that was the only way she could find peace. Days passed. The village whispered about Mama Teni's disappearance, but no one spoke openly of it. Some suspected the truth. Others simply believed she had vanished into the night, taking her secrets with her. But one thing was certain: her famous food stall, once the heart of the village, now stood empty. One evening, as Teni and Ada sat outside, staring at the abandoned stall, Ada turned to her. "What if we reopened it?" Teni hesitated. "I don't know if I can." "You can," Ada said firmly. "We'll do it together." But this time, no dark magic, just honest cooking, the way it should be. Teni thought about it. She remembered watching her mother cook when she was a child, before the greed took over, before the darkness. Maybe this was how she could honor her mother's memory, by rebuilding what had been lost, but doing it the right way. She nodded. "Okay, let's do it." Weeks later, the food stall reopened. The same pots, the same delicious meals, but now cooked with pure hands and honest hearts. People returned not because of spales, but because of true flavor and hard work. And though Mama Teni was gone, her story lived on. Some spoke of her as a cautionary tale of woman who let greed consume her. Others whispered of her final act of sacrifice, proof that even the most lost soul could find redemption. But Teni chose to remember her as a mother flawed, broken, but in the end, willing to do the right thing. And so, as the sun set over the village, and the scent of good food filled the air, Teni looked up at the sky and whispered, "Rest well, Mama. You are finally free." Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.